Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Faith Focus Weekly Discipleship Podcast. My name is Kevin Rognus, and I'm the Discipleship Director here at Faith Covenant Church. As always, I just want to thank you for watching or for listening today, and I want to encourage you to subscribe to make sure you don't miss anything, and also to leave a review and let us know how we're doing. My email address is listed in the show notes, so if you have any subjects that you want us to cover, any questions you want to ask, any stories that you would like to come on the podcast and share, I would love to hear all those things. So please make use of my email address and let me know what else we can be doing to make this a podcast that is really beneficial and helpful, educational, and all those things. So today, I'm just going to share a little bit of a personal story of some things that happened to me recently. And I took off a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving in mid-November. Not a couple of weeks. I was off for a couple of weeks. And for about 8 days, I went down to Arizona as just kind of taking some time off. It was a really nice time. In the latter portion of the trip, I spent time at my aunt's house and visiting my grandma, who I hadn't seen in a few years, as well as visiting a cousin and her family. And my brother also flew in from Montana, so it was just a really nice time to be with family and just really have a good time together. And also just, get away from work and get a change of pace and a change of scenery, all those things. You know how that is. But the first couple of days of the trip were really quite incredible for me. I flew down there on a Tuesday and got there in the late morning, and then I rented a car and drove up a couple hours to Sedona. If you've never been to Sedona, Arizona, I highly recommend it. So I spent that afternoon on Tuesday just doing some hiking at a couple of key spots that I'd read about. Just incredible views. The two places, if you're wondering, that I went to are called Bell Rock and Cathedral Rock. They're these enormous red sand, I think it's sandstone, but there's these enormous red rock formations that just kind of poke out of the desert and kind of tower over things. And you can climb up pretty high on them pretty safely and get some really, really beautiful, incredible views. So I did that on Tuesday, just loved the views I got, loved the challenge of a somewhat difficult hike, loved that. And then on Wednesday morning, I went on another couple of hikes, Wednesday morning into the afternoon a little bit, and just, again, incredible views. I was shocked at how much green I saw as well. When I think of Arizona, I think of desert, and I just didn't think I'd see that much green there. And so it was just a really interesting contrast, especially on the second day, of some of the views that I took in from higher elevations of all this red rock formation, but with just this carpet of green bushes and I think there were some sort of pine trees. I'm not a person that knows about fauna and flora and all that, so but yeah, just really amazing, incredible views and just colors that I didn't expect to see there, and amazing sandstone formations and such. So that was Wednesday morning and into the early afternoon, and then I left Sedona, took this really beautiful drive out of Sedona up to the Flagstaff area. I think that road is Highway 89 in Arizona. I highly recommend that drive, because just that drive on 89 from Sedona to Flagstaff is incredible in and of itself, just really beautiful. But then Wednesday evening, I went to the Grand Canyon, and I'd never been to the Grand Canyon. I think I flew over it years ago, but I went to the Grand Canyon to take in the sunset there, and I was shocked. I mean, I knew it would be beautiful, because I'd seen pictures, and I was like, that looks amazing to see. So I knew it would be beautiful, but I was shocked at how overwhelmed I was. I just watching the sun, the shadow of the evening just kind of slowly creep up the walls on the far side of the canyon. It was really so beautiful just to watch the different colors kind of change in the layers of the rock as the evening went by and as the sun went down. Really incredible. I was on the south rim, kind of looking north, and the south rim is, I think, about 1,000 feet lower in elevation than the north rim. And so the south rim is in shadow already, but you can still see kind of the last glimpses of sunlight on the other side of the canyon. And it's just really incredible to watch and to look down and see how big it is and how far across it is. And it's incredible because you're driving into this area and it's totally flat. And then you get to the edge of it and it looks like mountains, but it's a hole in the ground. It's there's something about it that's just, even if you've seen pictures of it, it's just so incredibly unexpected. So took in the sunset on Wednesday night, excuse me, and then on Thursday morning, I got up and went back to the canyon to watch the sunrise. And I think it's the first time in my life that I've ever gotten up just to watch the sunrise. I've certainly been awake many, many times before sunrise, but I don't think I've ever done it just with the intent of watching the sunrise. And it was something that somebody recommended. They're like, sunset's great, but if you go there to watch a sunrise, that's incredible too. So I was like kind of skeptical about getting up that early, but I'm so glad I did because it was incredible once again. And again, I was at the south rim, and so as the sun is rising in the east, we're still kind of in shadow on the south end, but then across the north side, you start to see just this tiny sliver of light hitting on the opposite rim, and it kind of looks like it's on fire almost because everything else is like dark and in shadow, and then there's just this narrow band of light just starting to hit some pieces of the canyon on the north side. And then as you keep looking towards the east, you start to see the glow of the sun coming over. You see, some of the plants along the ridge start to kind of glow and kind of filter the light coming through, and then suddenly the sun pops up and everybody's just kind of, because I was at a viewing point with a lot of different people there, and we were all just kind of enthralled watching this. It was so beautiful. And then you start to see just the colors that I saw, ascending the day before with the sunrise. I saw that descending as the light went down the canyon, and it was just so incredible. So then, after a little while of watching the sunrise, it was kind of cold, and I wasn't prepared for it to be as cold as it was. So I was like, okay, I got to get moving because I had a hike planned. So I went over to a trail called the Bright Angel Trail. It's supposed to be one of the more difficult hikes from the South Rim. So, of course, that's the one I chose. So I did this hike, and it was about 4.5 miles down and in, with about 3,000 feet of elevation change. For a little bit of perspective, that's 300 more feet than the tallest skyscraper in the world. So this trail took me down 3,000 feet, which is 300 feet more than the tallest skyscraper in the world. And they have signs at the top of the trail that say, going down is optional, going up is mandatory. So however far down you go, you have to go back that far up, which is a very helpful, good, and true warning. But it was just an incredible, incredible hike because you can kind of see this particular trail kind of starts in between kind of rock faces on both sides that kind of keep you shaded, but you're still seeing the sun as it kind of illuminates the rest of the canyon. And again, seeing those kind of colors emerge as the day goes on was really incredible. And as you go down the canyon, you're looking down these steep drops and you're going, oh, I see the trail way, way down there. And I see, okay, there's a little hut where you can sit down for a few minutes, and there's an outhouse next to it. Okay, let's get to there. And then you get to there a while later, and you turn around and look back and go, oh, wow, that's a long way down that I just came. But then there's still further to go, and you just keep looking down, and this trail just keeps going. And you couldn't even see the trail from the top, and now you're partway down, and you see the rest of it, and you're like, oh, wow, I've got a long way to go. And so I just kept going and going. And so I got about a little over 4.5 miles down the trail, and I kind of finally got away from the rock faces up against the canyon walls and kind of out a little bit into the open part of the canyon, and just saw these incredible vistas. And it was just so strange because when you're down there, it feels like you're in the mountains, of course, because you're down in the canyon, and it's like, wow, there's these huge towering rock faces everywhere. And I came down a long elevation climb, so I must be in mountains. But then I remember, well, I drove in on a flat landscape and then went down, and you realize, wait, this isn't mountains. This is a canyon. This is a giant hole in the ground. It blew my mind. I was just kind of in shock and in awe the entire time as I looked around. And so I got to a point where I had to turn around because the rest of the trail was under construction or something. They were replacing a water main or something. I was like, excuse me, I want to get through here. But so I turn around and start walking back up the trail. So I have to go 4.5 miles back and 3,000 miles up. And you get kind of around the corner a little bit and you see, oh, that's how far I came down. That's how far I have to go up. Yikes. Okay, let's get going. Let's get a move on here. And just started going back up. And just the scale of it, you can see pictures all you want, but you just do not understand how big it is, how incredible it is. And just the way that the sunlight was peeking through different rock crevices at different times was just so beautiful, so incredible. And as I walked the trail up, that particular trail wasn't a difficult trail. It was a relatively easy slope up. It just was a really long slope up. But as you go, you kind of start to look up and you see, oh, I can see people moving up there. That's where I have to get to. And you're like, those people are really tiny up there, but I'm still going there. And you can't understand it until you see it. So yeah, I made it all the way up and got back to the top of the trail and did some more hiking along the rim. Got tired of that and took the bus to a couple other sites along the rim. And it was just a really, really moving and powerful experience to witness. And I didn't really understand it entirely for a few days. I was like, what was so powerful and overwhelming about this? I felt something really deeply theologically significant happen. And I was just kind of wrestling. I was like, what is this? Like, what is sitting with me with this? And because I've been to other places with amazing scenery and just been kind of in awe of God's creation. You know, I've seen different mountain landscapes and geysers and waterfalls and oceans and different things. But something about this was sitting differently with me. You know, I'd certainly appreciated, God's creativity and the different kinds of rock and the ways that the river had to do all these things over time to make this canyon. At one point on the trail on the way up, I saw a ram just kind of off in the bushes. And for a while, the ram was on the trail. And so I was like, wow, how can something like this survive in this kind of environment? It was crazy. But none of that really helped me understand what it was that I was feeling. And a couple days later, I was kind of journaling about it and kind of going through it. And I was like, what's going on here? And I realized part of what it was. And I realized that I had been experiencing, when I was in the canyon and hiking in Sedona, just a really deep fundamental truth about God that is revealed in the Bible. And it's that all of creation testifies to God. So let's look at Psalm 19 verses 1 through 6 real quick here. Psalm 19 verses 1 through 6. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the expanse proclaims the work of his hands. Day after day they pour out speech. Night after night they communicate knowledge. There is no speech, there are no words, their voice is not heard. Their message has gone out to the whole earth, and their words to the end of the world. In the heavens he has pitched a tent for the sun. It is like a bridegroom coming from his home, It rejoices like an athlete running a course. It rises from one end of the heavens and circles to their other end. Nothing is hidden from its heat. And I was experiencing, especially in the Grand Canyon, the reality of this scripture. All of creation was declaring the glory of God. It was pouring out speech to me, as it says in verse 2. Day after day, they pour out speech. That's what I was experiencing. I was just overwhelmed by the amount of speech that was coming from the rock formations, from the river far, far down below, even further than what I went down. I was, the sun and the sunset and the sunrise was pouring out speech of who God is to me. And I was just taking it in, and it was almost too much to process. And it says night after night they communicate knowledge, and that's what I was experiencing. All of creation was communicating knowledge to me. It was incredible. God had pitched a tent for the sun, so I saw that happening. Like, I saw the place where God was sending the sun to go take a rest, as it were, and then saw the place that it came back from in the morning. I saw these words of Scripture being lived out in real time in creation itself. Creation was telling me, was screaming at me, it felt like, about how big God is, about how creative God is, about how powerful God is, about how much of an artist God is to create all this for our benefit, for our enjoyment. It was just so powerful. We see similar passages elsewhere too in Scripture. One of those places is Romans chapter 1, verses 18 to 20, which says this: "For God's wrath is revealed from heaven against all godlessness and unrighteousness of people, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. Since what can be known about God is evident among them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, that is, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen since the creation of the world, being understood through what he has made. As a result, people are without excuse." And so that passage is telling us that even people who may not have heard about God have to look at creation and be in awe and be amazed and have to think, only God can create this. This is too much for this to not have been created by God. Creation is testifying to God, whether people realize it or not. When I was at some of the different observation points at the Grand Canyon, I just kind of heard expressions of wonder as people kind of took in the views. And I don't know what their faith background is. I don't know what they were experiencing, but I knew that they were in awe. And I knew that they were in awe of what God had made. I don't know how they were understanding that, but I know that creation was testifying not just to me, but to them as well. All creation testifies to God. God shows himself in creation. I remember thinking that only God could create a canyon so large. There was also a little museum place at the South Rim that kind of talks about the geology of the Grand Canyon and the different layers of rocks and the different ways that erosion works and the geologic forces that it took to create this canyon. And even that impressed me so much more. I'd already kind of seen a lot of the views of the canyon at that point, but just kind of going through and reading about how the canyon developed just gave me even more appreciation for how God did this over such a long time. It's incredible to take it all in. So, all of that to say, I just think I just wanted to share that experience of being testified to by God. I already believed in God before I went to the Grand Canyon. I didn't necessarily need that testimony necessarily, at least not in terms of I didn't need it to believe something. I didn't need it to believe God. I didn't need to be convinced. but it was still just so amazing to experience that testimony. And we don't have to necessarily go to the Grand Canyon to experience that. Many of you are probably here in Minnesota, and we don't necessarily have the same kinds of awe-inspiring landscapes necessarily. Although, people can be struck in awe by so many different things. So I don't want to discount Minnesota scenery and the ways that Minnesota can testify to God's creation. But I think sometimes we just need to open our eyes a little bit and just kind of stop and wonder, how is the natural world, how is the natural beauty here testifying to who God is? Is this a landscape that provides fertile farmland that is used to sustain God's people? Is it something that inspires awe-inspiring scenery? Is it a landscape that provides resources for us to, grow our economy? Whatever the case may be, we have an opportunity to look at creation and see how creation itself is testifying about God and who He is. So, if you've never had the experience of going to the Grand Canyon especially, I highly recommend it if you have the means. Sedona's amazing too. I'd love to give you some suggestions of different places to visit. But yeah, just open your eyes to the ways that God is testifying through all of creation. Thank you so much for watching or listening today, and I hope you have a wonderful and blessed day.